Pull up a chair, Everest Live. I'm going deep today. It's May 10th. I'm Ben Ayers with Everest Live here at chilly Everest Base Camp. Start with the Everest news updates. Basically, as we mentioned yesterday, the rope fixing team is resting and recovering in Everest Base Camp. This is a team that's been sort of mobilized by Seven Summit Treks, but overall coordinated and managed by the Expedition Operators Association of Nepal, which is this like trade group of all the big expedition companies. So as the rope fixers are kind of getting their strength back here in Everest Base Camp, the Expedition Operators Association have gotten together with all the different expedition teams at base camp, and they've all mobilized manpower to move gear from Camp 2 up to the end of the ropes at Camp 4. So basically what they're doing is they're shuttling loads of fixed ropes, oxygen, food, other gear that this rope fixing team is going to need to safely and efficiently put the ropes all the way up to the summit. So what we're looking at is a likely timeline of May 13th or 14th for the first summits. This is the first time I'm going to say it, but I'm feeling fairly confident that that's when these first summits are going to happen. And following quick behind them, I think, will also be the first wave of climbers and clients. What I think is pretty impressive is, given the extremely delayed start this year, these summits are likely to be only 2 or 3 days behind what we saw last year. That gives us enough time in the season, hopefully, to allay a lot of the fears about horrendous overcrowding. We're going to see what happens, but generally speaking, it's an incredible job done by everyone on the mountain, from SPCC to the expedition operators, to turn the season around so quickly. We've heard from a ton of climbers, people who are now going up and down through the icefall, that the route is in the best condition it's ever been. So that's some good news. In other news on the mountain, kind of behind me, you can hear the low rumble of the heavy lift drones from Airlift. Don't know if we can see them, but they've been flying loads all day long up onto Camp 1 to help supply the higher camps to get everything ready for the big summit movement. So Everest is in its full modern industrial state. Other news today, social media in Nepal was dominated by a major scandal, which is that in one of the Indian camps here at Everest Base Camp, apparently the Indian flag was larger than the Nepali flag that was flying over the camp. To me, that seems like sort of a non-issue, but this is Mount Everest. Everything seems to take on outsized importance here. Maybe people in the audience feel differently. Let me know in the comments. But in the light of what I'm about to talk about, to me, the flag thing seems a little bit silly. So what I'm going to talk about now is some news you might have seen in our earlier dispatch today, is that early this morning, we had the second death of the Everest season. This morning, a climber, his name is Bijaya Ghimire, and he works with Tag Nepal, which is the local outfitter for climbing the Seven Summits. Bijaya was a beloved member of the Climbing the Seven Summits family, and he was actually a real pioneer for human rights and equity in Nepal. Even though I didn't know Bijaya, I've spent the day listening to a lot of YouTube interviews with him, kind of getting to know who he was, and I deeply regret that I will not have a chance to meet who was a truly incredible human. The circumstances around his passing, basically, he was 35 years old. He was on an acclimatization rotation up to Camp 1, and he didn't feel good. He had some chest pain. So he turned around and he walked back down towards base camp, and on the way down, he passed away sitting on the side of the trail. So it seems all things are pointing to a medical condition. I don't have any more information than that to share, but we are deeply, deeply sorry for him and his family, for the Climbing the Seven Summits and the Tag Nepal team. And for me, one of the things I'm trying to do this year is to bring a face and a name to the people that we lose on the mountain. I think sometimes it's very easy, especially with high altitude workers, to sort of anonymize those that are lost. And in Bijaya's case, he was a person that is impossible to anonymize. And the reason for that is, and this is what our deep dive today is going to be, is that Bijaya was from the so-called Dalit or untouchable caste. His full name was Bijaya Ghimire Bisukarma. Bisukarma is a last name that often people whose, family profession were blacksmiths. And I'm now going to take a medium dive, not a deep dive, into how caste in Nepal impacts mountaineering. This is something that multiple PhD theses could be written on. This is something that I, as a white dude who lives in Nepal, am not an authority to speak on, but I'm going to share what I've learned in the 2+ decades that I've lived here to try to help. My goal is to help our audience and to help people understand what Bijaya overcame to be the first person from his community to summit Everest, and to give you a picture of how incredible he and other groundbreakers like him truly are in the context here. So when I posted the update this afternoon, we had a couple of comments that were like, I didn't know there was a caste system in Nepal. How does this work? So, very brief history lesson, not comprehensive history lesson. Nepali historical scholars, forgive me for this, but basically Nepal as a nation was formed in its current configuration in the early to mid 1700s by the descendants of the former royal family. The control of the country was kept under a Hindu kingdom, a Hindu monarchy. So the first laws of the country were all based upon Hindu religious culture and principles. Nepal's first legal code, called the Mukhi Ain, was basically a set of civil laws, many of which were based upon how people from different occupations, which were also tied to your ethnicity or your family group, could interact with one another. And society was divided up into different groups. At the top of this pile, you have the Brahmins, which is the priest caste, and you have the Kshetris, which were the warrior or the army caste. They were at the top of the pile. At the bottom of the pile, you have the people who do the manual labor or the so-called dirty jobs like blacksmithing, which Bijaya's ancestors were a part of that ethnic group. These were all arranged hierarchical. There was a billion different rules about who could touch whom, who could touch water, who could pass food from one to another. And it was an incredibly ruthless form of religious-based ethnic discrimination, basically. Nepal's first laws were based on this. And so basically then when you look at groups like the Sherpas, for example, who are Buddhists and aren't really invested in all this Hindu stuff, these groups also had a place in this tree of caste hierarchies. Some of them were considered non-enslavable alcohol drinkers, for example, right? It was all figured in. But the picture I'm trying to paint here is that Nepal, for a very long time, was a society that institutionalized discrimination based upon your ethnicity and your work. And those two were also joined. So if your last name was Bishwakarma, you were born into being a blacksmith, and that was passed down from generation to generation. These things were institutionalized. In 1968, Nepal finally outlawed untouchability. These Dalit castes were considered, quote, untouchable. For someone from a higher caste, if they touched someone from these lower castes, they would lose their ritual purity. So this was outlawed in 1968, but of course, as discrimination goes, the echo and the shadow of that institution is very, very long and very, very embedded in the systems of the state. So, fast forward to 2020, 2019, let's say, when Bijaya first climbed Mount Everest. Bijaya is from Lower Solu, from the hills, let's say, I don't know, 5-6 day walk from where we are. And he started working as a porter on in trekking groups. He worked his way up as a kitchen assistant, and then as a cook. And then he got a chance to work, carrying loads high up on the mountain. And in one of his interviews that I watched on YouTube, he said that, he watched, as he worked at base camp, he watched so many different types of people from all over the world climb Mount Everest. And he thought about how at that time, for 65 years, all sorts of people had been setting records on Mount Everest, but why didn't anybody from his group have a chance to do it? And he decided that that was going to be him. He struggled tremendously to raise money, to figure out how to find a way to get himself up to the summit. And so if you can imagine, in 2019, for Bijaya, these kind of institutional discriminations or prejudices, let's say, still existed for him. So for him to be able to go into Kathmandu society and find money, to find jobs, to find housing, that kind of quiet discrimination, unfortunately, is very much a part of Nepali society still. And he had to struggle against that. But in 2019, he made it to the summit of Mount Everest. He climbed it 2 times after that. He was a 3-time summiteer. And he became sort of an outspoken personality about caste rights, about equity. He became sort of a fitness vlogger and a journalist and an absolutely radiant human being. And I guess the picture that I'm trying to paint here is not to sort of throw shade on Nepali society. I'm not. I come from America. We have a similar long legacy that's based around race. It's not different. What I'm trying to show is that even within the legacy of this in Nepal, there are luminaries like Bijaya who are groundbreaking people. And I'm just so sad that we lost one today. Sorry. And even though I didn't know him, he did something very, very important for this country. And so thankfully, the rescue was very quick and efficient. He will be, laid to rest with his family. We're sending so much love to him. And I guess to me, this is just a story that I wanted to tell that we've seen so much this season. There's a film that we're about to put up on our channel about a woman from Afghanistan who overcame incredible trials to come here to climb Mount Everest. And it's a bit like what I was sort of ranting about the other day about how Everest gathers so much negativity and how sometimes that can cast a shadow on the real importance of this place. And even though it's a mountain, and even though there's a lot of room for improvement, it's a place where important things happen, and it's a place where barriers are broken. And I'm really sorry that Bijaya won't be able to continue to do that. But I know that many, many, many people will follow in his footsteps and do so. That's my rant for today. Sorry about getting all emotional. It's been a long day, but really appreciate you guys hanging in there with me for that. I really just wanted to share that perspective, to bring a human face to it. And, let's all send some good energy his way as he makes his way through the ether into whatever's next for him. Thanks a lot. Any questions, Andy? Yeah, sorry if I was a downer. Tomorrow it's going to be great. Tomorrow we have a super special guest coming on. I'll give you a hint. Her name starts with a K and ends in Harila. And we're going to talk about her Triple Crown attempt and her oxygenless summit attempt of Everest, Lhotse, and Nuptse. So tomorrow is going to be a ton of fun. Thanks for hanging in there with me today. We'll see you tomorrow.